Now, if we go little in the history part of the Northeast. So when we were creating the boundary, okay, there were 3 parties involved, and that was in 1914. And in 1914, there was a Shimla Accord. Now, there's a different Shimla Agreement between India and Pakistan. This was a Shimla Accord. So there was a Shimla Accord between 3 countries, that is India, China, and of course Tibet. And this was to resolve the boundary issue. Till 1910, Tibet was part of China. Usse pehle also we had historical periods. Again, these are not so important. So King dynasty used to rule China, and Tibet was part. Then Tibet got free, became autonomous, and started running its own system. So Tibet was an independent entity, and Tibetans identified themselves, independently out of China. So this was a boundary issue that was supposed to be resolved, and there was a agreement or discussion. Let's resolve the boundary between India and Tibet. But China also was a party to it, because some area we had a boundary with China as well. Now this issue was broadly settled, except in some or few areas where China had its own, you can say, disagreement. So when China left, it's like 3 people sat and 2 are okay. So maybe agreement is accepted. But China had its own reservation on the some of the boundary issues. So McMahon line is what I'm talking about. So McMahon line was decided between the boundary between. So how do you decide that this is your area, this is my area, because it is disputed? So one common principle that was followed was that since it is a mountainous area, whichever is the highest cliff, in that particular domain will be considered as a boundary area, because this was a mountainous area. So which was the highest cliff was supposed to be considered. So McMahon line was accepted. India and Tibet agreed. China had some reservation in some area, but China eventually, after this, it backed out at the last moment, in the last phase. Reasons are known to them. So this historical problem, when India got independence, this carried on, because the British India came with a map that this is the McMahon line, this is the boundary, and we thought that issue is settled. But when People Republic of China came in 1949, it did not accept the McMahon line, stating that this is a disputed region which has to be resolved. It also came with a second claim, and the claim was that they said that Arunachal Pradesh is South Tibet. Arunachal Pradesh is South Tibet, and hence they said that we have a claim over Arunachal Pradesh as well. So since then, that boundary issue has been lingering, and as we know that boundary issue will not resolve anytime soon, for the reason known to China, because China wants to use this boundary issue as a bargaining chip. I do not want that issue to be resolved, because then, because every time if there is a problem, I will use that issue to resolve the issue. Okay, so that is how you can see the Arunachal Pradesh issue is still there. Historically, these areas are connected through ancient southern Silk Route. India also recognized strategic importance of that. It is not so important. So historically, India and China were 2 bigger economies in the world, and India and China together accounted for around 50 to 60% of the world GDP, the world trade. And thereby it was very natural that you had some route, ancient Silk Route, ancient trade route. Okay, so China tries to bring those issues and say that we had, stating that, we have claimed this area, we do not claim this area. So that is how it is there. Again, you don't have to memorize these stuffs. I'm just telling you for the sake of historical part. Anyway, we'll come to the Look East policy later on. And right now we are trying to, so we are also trying to connect, if we are looking at, we are also trying to connect with trying to resolve the issue. Now, one problem in the insurgency of Northeast has been, there has been lack of development. And that is also true. In fact, if you remember what I said, most of the internal security issues that we are facing is because of lack of development. Development is a very important parameter for prosperity of any region. Because development has not happened, there is alienation, there are, the people in the area where development has not happened are misguided, they take a different route, they become anti-state. So all those concerns have been there. So India has been trying to do a lot of work in the areas. Detailed is given in the notes. Look East policy, tri-nation, we have a highway, Kaladan multimodal project. So we are developing. In fact, our foreign policy is based on the idea of neighborhood first policy. So we are trying to build that, and the area contiguous to the northeast is mainly about the Southeast Asia. And we are trying to build a very strong relation with Southeast Asia. And Look East policy, which is Act East today, is a policy that we are following. Okay, so we'll come to that later on. Now coming to Northeast, now why there is a problem? And for that you have to understand little history. When Britishers ruled India, they had a policy of non-interference in Northeast area. These were hilly, population, hilly areas. Also, this was an area which was not easily accessible, difficult terrain. You have, even today, if you have go to Arunachal Pradesh in some districts, it takes days. There are times when the roads is not there, you have to take a whole detour. Okay, that is the reality. So around that time, you can imagine, an objective of British was not to develop India, make prosperity, create job, opportunity, make road, highway. Whatever they did was for the sake of their own, development. And they felt that their more concern was the mainland India, and this was a frontier area, maybe buffer area. Even Myanmar was under control of them. So they followed more like a policy of non-interference, and they kind of isolation. There is a theory of isolation, because these northeast area was entirely tribal belt. If I look at some parts of northeast, so they kind of left them, in an isolated form, and the interference was relatively less. So the kind of nationalist movement, the integration we kind of saw in the other parts of India, North India, South India, Central India, West India, East India, that was not visible in Northeast. Also, the demographic of Northeast is very different. So racially, those people were different. And also somewhere, because race is a negative term, race means different in physical features, color, bodily features, your hair, all those things come under the racial features. So there is a section of people in Northeast who felt that why should we be part of India? Because when India became independent, these area automatically became part of India. Assam became a part of India, so all these areas became part of India. And when Indian Constitution Article 1, what does it say? India, Bharat, that is Union of State. So if you're a part of India, it is a one-way route. The union is indestructible. And that is the philosophy we followed. Because we knew that in different parts of India, different states were harboring dream of creation of their own independent sovereign state. So there were Fiji-Parius tendencies in India. Or Fiji-Parius tendencies wanted, there was a demand for Travancore, Dravid Nadu, Punjabi Suba, in different parts of, but these were more like a muted demand, not like a demand on a very larger scale, but such demand or murmurs were there. And such demands and murmurs were there, so it was very important that India kind of, when you create a nation, you try to make sure that these issues do not crop up anytime. And hence you said, it is if you become part of India, it is indestructible. Union is indestructible. Within union, we can do anything. So when these became part of India, and some state, especially if you try to see Nagas. So Nagas mostly had an independently demand of creation of their own independent Naga sovereign state. Or they wanted to create an area where Naga will reside, and that area will be a different Naga limb or Naga country like that. So when we try to do that, so when that issue cropped, India said, see, whatever freedom you want, whatever autonomy you want, we will give it to you. But that will be within the boundary of Indian Constitution. And some Nagas, which were more moderate, they were ready to agreement, find peace to the process. But there were some people who were not ready, and those people led the insurgency movements. And of course, they had ground support because these people promised that we will give you this, we will give you that. So that is how the issue started. So first is Nagas, or for that matter, the entire tribal belt of Northeast, or the Northeast population. They were fiercely independent, they were different, they were distinct, distinctively different from in terms of culture, language, So they feel that why should we be part of India? Because the idea of nation was that there should be some kind of similarity, and that similarity was not visible. Now remember, the idea of this nation where everything should be similar is a Western concept. India, on the contrary, the concept of nation for India is about unity and diversity, mutual coexistence, unlike what West believes. So naturally, one reason was that the Northeast population, they believed, a lot of people in the Northeast believe that we are fiercely independent, we are culturally different, and thereby we should not be part of India.